Pultegeist, Charles. Remember
Way to
that
go,
movie
Jason. I do.
with the
I
little
do. I
girl
do.
with that little girl? Something weird happened to her. I think she died, but we've got all the intelligence community sort of up in arms that Donald Trump has appointed Bill Pulte to be the director of national intelligence. I like Bill Pulte. I think he's been quite effective so far. How are you tonight, Charles? Today in Penang?
I'm I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. All's good. Yeah, I think the lack of intelligence community should be upset because it's hopelessly pathetic. I mean, if you look at how much money, how much money we think our intelligence agencies have spent since, let's call it 1991, and what has America gotten out of all that? We didn't. We were surprised by the attacks of 9/11, in quotes, surprised, right? Um, we have allowed these supposed experts to peddle the myth that Russia attacked Ukraine unprovoked. It's a complete myth, right? We've allowed the mainstream intelligence experts to sell as truth the idea that the Biden family did not profit in any way from the response to the Russian attack. And then as you start looking more closely into stuff they've, high profile events that they looked at, for example, to go back to my favorite specialty, um, Lois Lerner, and first it was rogue IRS agents in the Cincinnati office of the IRS may have targeted unfairly Tea Party groups. This explosive leak came out on, I think, the Friday before May 13th, 2013, right? That was a purposeful, I think, slant designed to get the Tea Party supporters up in arms, but also designed to ignore the degree to which IRS officials have allowed Antifa, which later came into prominence, groups like Antifa, to steal hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars through porous nominally tax exempt entities operating across the country, and in particular in blue cities and blue states. Nothing has been done about this. Why is it so difficult for our lack of intelligence agencies to round up the money behind Antifa? Why is it so difficult? I mean, it's a project I would think I don't even know the tools that the IRS currently has, but I was told by Jeff Girth back in 2000, I forget when, it might have been 15, that the original, his original look into the Clintons, et cetera, came at a time when the IRS had the ability, and I want to say 2002, 3, 4 territory, with its computer systems, to cross-check back then what donors said they were giving with what in Schedule B, the confidential reports with the donors' names normally blocked out, what a charity like the Clinton Foundation or Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative or other affiliates, what they claimed they got from major donors, and they saw back in that time frame, 2002 to 4, some of the anomalies that you and I have found, and others have found, and yet this Clinton Foundation is going to have a big birthday celebration in August for Bill's 80th birthday. They're going to have another gab and grift fest at the Clinton Global Initiative in September. You know, the lack of intelligence community with 17 different agencies. Please tell me why you need 17 of anything, right? There's a theory that the optimal diversification number, if you want to have a diversified portfolio of anything, is 16. That's something that people knew in the 17th century. Before that, when they structured investments in ships to typically be a 16th. Nobody wanted to own 100% of a ship. So you'd buy a 16th or 2/16ths of multiple ships to diversify away, in theory, the risk of an individual ship being sunk or privateered or captured. So, the fact that you've got an outsider coming in and all these bullet-headed morons, who are ex-CIA, ex-this, ex-that, going on, fake news, CNN, MSNBC, to decry what the threat that Pulte poses, just get off your high horses, man. I mean, our intelligence experts don't have the first fucking clue what's going on. Europe is committing empathetic suicide, Western Europe, with its, gigantic bureaucracy of now unelected people who are stifling national initiatives across Western Europe, welcomed barbarous, illegal immigrants, protecting these people who are committing wanton crime across Europe, in a model that morons in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and other blue city mayors are trying to emulate. Why isn't that a focus of our deep state intelligence apparatus? Why are we supporting a Europe that's killing itself from the inside? So I applaud the idea of a guy like Pulte coming in. And I think, basically the approach that I would take is I would have truly objective people, smart people, come in and pick apart to tell me, what are the important elements of each agency? What does the CIA do that's different than the DIA? And I would say we're going to go from 17 to 5 or
I can't
17
tell you,
to
Mr.
3.
President, we can't tell you that. It's classified.
Yeah, fuck you and your classified stuff.
You're out of this meeting.
Guess what? Your office is being packed up as we speak.
President Hortel, we fired 16 of the 17 agencies. I mean,
Yeah.
You look at these other countries. Doesn't Russia have like two, and China has like one big one?
Right.
And
Right. And this idea we can't tell you about we can't read you into this and blah 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 bullshit. And what do these people actually do? I remember at business school, there was this professor, Mike Yoshino, who's a very funny guy, actually, a very smart guy. And he taught, I think the class was called Business, Government, and the International Economy, if I remember correctly. It may have been just international business, but multinational business. But he would say, all right, Mr. Goodman, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do specifically? And most of us would say, well, I'll hire a consulting firm. No. What are you going to do now? Are you going to stay at your desk? Are you going to get out of your desk? Are you going to stand up? Where are you going to go? Who are you going to talk to? What are you going to do to solve this problem? And all these people who Hillary Clinton, the famous pedestal email, am I supposed to be at a cabinet meeting? Anybody who would ask a question like that is like fourth or fifth in the line of succession, is a certified moron.
Charles, when you call this big meeting as President Ortel of the 17 agencies, I suspect they might say something like, Charles, you don't understand. You got to keep like 303 gold bars around the house.
I know. And we're not going to kick off the meeting, with a chant to some indigenous spirit, recognizing the ancestors, ownership of land in America. This is not a serious exercise. And people like Mark Warner, I think he's a senator from Virginia, one of them, the people on the Senate Intelligence Committee have done more damage to our country, in particular since January 6th. But before that, pushing the Russia hoax. Individual senators, and granted they are elected, but they and these activist judges and these journalist anchor buffoons. I mean, the president is in theory doing some serious business here, and he needs to get business done for the benefit of the American people. At the same time, I don't know what agency, it's probably the FBI, but it is crystal clear that the elections in California are being stolen.
Well, you're reminding me of something important, Charles. I don't know if you got to see this, but that woman, Kristen Welker, she used the Leslie Stahl defense where whatever Trump said, she just said, well, there's no evidence. And then it is like, Leslie, what are you talking about? There's evidence all over the place. So, she said there's no evidence that the Capitol Police escorted people into the Capitol on January 6th, but yet there's videos right here, tons of people who said it happened. These videos have been out for a long time. These people just say there's no evidence, right. And then you show them the evidence and they pretend they're Chandler Castro, the smoothie king of the 6th precinct or the 10th precinct, just close their eyes and pretend there's no evidence.
Right. Well, again, and that guy Harari or whatever his name is, the deputy to Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum,
Oh,
and
yeah.
another certified moron talking about, the masses deserve to be fed propaganda. No, we don't. Not at all. I mean, Thomas Jefferson and the founders understood very clearly that the American Constitution only works in a participative fashion, that the electorate needs to get to be knowledgeable about the issues and needs to come out to vote. And also, the Constitution contemplated that government would be a part-time function, that citizens would tend to their assets, and during the idle times, for farming, they would come in and participate as representatives and senators. You'd have part-time judges and part-time this and that. Instead, what we have is this vast unelected bureaucracy of people who are so bold as to say, look, presidents come and go, senators come and go. We're the glue that keeps this place together. If a senator mouths off and goes in a direction, well, we won't necessarily let that person do too much damage. Same for a president. And, in any controversy, we'll game that system up by controlling all the clerks of all the judges and putting as many anti-constitution justices in as we can. This is we've watched, you and I together have commented on multiple elections, and the left is relentless. They're even now they're saying Hakeem Jeffries and others are saying, many others, Susan Rice, are saying we're going to win in 26, we're going to win in 28, and people who are supporting Trump are going to be persecuted after we take control of the White House in 2029. That is, I would argue that's bold speech, but tantamount to criminal behavior. I mean, we didn't elect people to serve at the sufferance of the losing party. Trump won, and this team is doing everything that it can to make it impossible for Trump and his people to govern. Spurious lawsuit after spurious lawsuit, fake news, propaganda, the young kids being indoctrinated into this woke bullshit. And it's time to go at this with a carving knife. And I fear we're now. What day is it where you are? June 6th or 7th?
Yeah, 7th.
7th. So I mean, you've got really 23 days of June. Then the summer, it's tough to get stuff done in the summer. Because in legal cases, people have vacations. Important people take vacations, and you can stall, delay, and
Judges don't do anything when they're not on vacation.
Right, but what these people are trying to do, and Comey's already done it, pushed his trial date to late October. They're trying to push any of the controversies that would animate the right, in particular, and voters to come to the polls, like the likelihood that Barack Obama committed treason, and he's in the process now of Obama is in the process now of trying to overturn the will of the people in, quote, our democracy. I mean, he's getting stoked up to do that on Juneteenth, June 19th, when the Obama Crapola Foundation opens the door.
Shinola Foundation. Charles, did you see this letter from the 28 esteemed, whoever this is, who wrote, this has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, as far as I can tell. They wrote this letter here about Bill Pulte, the 28 undersigned former service secretaries to Senator Tom Cotton. They don't have that many tricks in the book, do they?
They don't. And, really, if we were to figure out exactly how much capital the intelligence agencies control, I mean, going back to In-Q-Tel, for example, the venture capital arm of the CIA, I believe, if we were to look at the assets held by the deep state and also the annual spending of the deep state, the true number, it's probably bigger than 95% of all the GDPs of the 200 countries. And what are they doing with all this?
They advertise that they have this on The internet. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Here's the
Yeah.
portfolio, Charles. Let's see. I bet you they own SpaceX, Volnchuk, HEO. I don't
No, I
know.
mean,
I haven't heard of that.
this,
Oh, Anduril, of course. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, InQtel should be merged into a sovereign wealth fund, and the intelligence agencies should be stripped out of there because, the way these things work, Dylan Reed had attracted a top team of venture capitalists to come in, one to start a fund, and the more important guy to run the whole firm. And I began investing in venture capital in 1981 or two, thereabouts. And if you find a winner, if you're a top venture capital firm, you are going to get good ideas will flow to you. It's kind of success is self-reinforcing. So if you start getting these companies coming to you, and you're able, because you're a skilled analyst and skilled venture capitalist, to figure out this one is a winner, well, you buy a Series A stock, can be that's the first outside round of money that goes into one of these private ventures. If you hold on to that, you will become very wealthy very quickly. And so if you're basically big enough and you have tools that you can lend to these companies to make them grow faster and more profitably, the ability to pass around the opportunity to invest in Series A, B, C, et cetera, before something goes public is a tool that can make people connected to the fund very wealthy. And it's a tool that even people at the SEC will have a hard time analyzing. So you need really competent people to think this through. And as a guess, people close to InQtel have been enriching themselves. It wouldn't shock me to find that John Brennan, for example, has a lot of money.
Yeah, like where does this money go when they invest? Like they're obviously using tax money. I mean, if it's the CIA, it's a government thing. Well, apart from gold bars and Rolexes,
Right.
smuggled in the keister, where do these guys get in money if it's not from taxes? So who gets this InQtel
Right.
investment win?
Right. And, you go back to Iran-Contra, for example. Congress says thou shalt not support the Contras. And so people on the right figure out devious ways to support the Contras, tapping into money that is rooted to the Contras via illegally formed and operated, not supposed nonprofits. I mean,
Oh
this
my
seems to be
God,
it.
the InQtel is a non-profit venture capital firm. What the hell
No,
does that mean?
oh my God. Well, then it must have a 990.
Yeah. So Steve Bozier is the head of it. Charles, I think we've just discovered what we're going to be doing during the sponsor exclusive segment right here coming up
Right.
in less than 10 minutes on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. How could it be nonprofit venture capital? Does it even make sense?
No, that doesn't make sense. And we'll get into that in the next segment. But the other hallmark of or potential for devious activities is when you start getting engaged as an American reporter. In other words, your financial statements will be denominated in dollars in multiple foreign countries. And a key to me right away to see that the Clinton Foundation was a fraud is it claimed to operate in 40 countries, but it had no entry on its financial statements for unrealized gains and losses in foreign currencies, which of course you have to have, through especially if you operate in countries where the currency is plunging, for example, like Iran right now, where the value of the, I think, rial or whatever they call it has plunged. So if you've got very volatile currencies, you have an opportunity to cook your books by claiming that you transferred your dollars into reals at a certain exchange rate when in fact you did it at a different rate. And in any event, if you operate internationally, there has to be a line, typically in the, I believe it's in the net retained earnings, there's a separate line, unrealized foreign exchange gains and losses. There's no such entry for the Clinton Foundation in the historical books when they were expanding into 40 countries. It's ridiculous.
How do you like these numbers at a glance, Charles? 880 million in net assets, 134 million in expenses, negative 1.9 million net income. That's the 2025 990 for InQtel.
What's its year end?
Where do we see that?
The top of the page.
Gross receipts, 132
No, no, no.
million.
Top of the page, very top. It
Oh,
says it's
oh, yeah, it's March 31st,
24 or
25.
20, 25. Yeah, okay. So this, all right, that's odd too. Why would you have a year end in March? I mean,
This is a 501c3.
I understand, but by convention in the United States, year end typically is December 31st. In Japan, it's March 31st. In some
Whoa,
countries,
this
June
guy's getting
30th.
2.4 million
No, no. I
and then
mean,
another 1.5.
yeah, no, it's preposterous. I mean,
Oh.
nonprofit. Who are these people?
And then the chairman gets 42,000. That seems like a discrepancy. I don't know. S. Bozier, C. Darby, M.
Where,
Crow.
where is this
What
based?
does END mean? This is in Virginia.
Oh yeah. Look, this is preposterous, right? Venture capital is now a very well-developed business. It wasn't a well-developed business in the 70s, but now it is. There are a series of major league, uh, blue chip, if you want to call them that, venture capital firms. There's something called a stick fund. So a stick fund, if you call it, there's a firm I think called Landmark Ventures or something like that. Ours was what was it? Well, Saratoga Partners was one, and you do Saratoga Partners as the first one, and then Saratoga Partners, Roman numeral two. Funds that have predecessor funds are called stick funds, and people like to invest in stick funds because the team has been around typically for a while. It has a record that you can look into carefully. It's developed most likely a specialty or an area of expertise. There are many of these stick funds around, right? You don't need a new nonprofit, right? There's no good reason to set up a venture capital as a nonprofit. Indeed, people would argue that the best venture capitalists, their goal is to get filthy rich from doing this. So why would you go into a venture that is competing against profit-seeking maniacs in the guise of a nonprofit? You're not going to attract the best people for that. So who are these people? What are their ties to the intelligence community? Who in the intelligence community is making money off all this? And whose fucking idea was this? I think we looked at this in the past, and I believe it's somebody who's we don't like. Was the original founder of InQtel. He came out of one of the defense contractors, I think. He's a controversial guy.
I'm sure. Former Lockheed Martin CEO Norman Augustine
That's
and
him, yeah.
tech entrepreneur Gilliam Louis served as the firm's founding CEO.
Yeah. This was, a bad idea then. It's a bad idea now. It should be the links to the intelligence community should be severed, and the assets in this thing should go into a sovereign wealth fund. A drop in the bucket.
He's 90.
Good. Let him enjoy his final years on Earth.
Oh, he was the former Secretary of the Army. So yeah, I think these guys get in there and they're like, wow, there's billions of dollars flying in every which direction. I guess we could probably steal, 2.5 million a year and nobody would notice.
Right. Again, I just think this idea, there's this bill, I think, that's floating around trying to limit compensation in a nonprofit to $1 million. I think nonprofit compensation should be limited to 250,000. So it's a princely sum if you're living, if you're part of a two-career couple and you're living in a rural area. I think nonprofits should be housed in, should be operated from low-cost areas, rural areas, and 250 is a lot of money. I mean, I'd actually make it, whatever the single, the median single income in a household is in the consumer expenditure survey. I would say the maximum that you can pay somebody in a nonprofit is 4 times that, however that math works out. It's going to be close to 250. And keep it that way. And you'd say, look, if you want to do anything else, set up a company. If you want to pay yourself $1 trillion a year out of profits of 5 trillion, that's fine by me. You're going to pay taxes on that. That's great. But I mean, in a nonprofit, it's not trying to make a profit. It's not trying to make people rich.
Am I stupid, Charles, or is a nonprofit venture capital firm like a vegan cattle rancher? How can you have such a thing?
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And the same is true with the NBA, or what is it?
NFL.
NFL, yeah, where that's a nonprofit. And the leader of it is paying himself something like $35 million a year. I mean, why is that a nonprofit? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. And, instead of having what we have in Washington, D.C. and in the punditry, are people who love to say, well, I don't want to talk about substance. Let's talk about process. Let's talk about the way, you may have some concerns, but you don't understand the process of regulating a nonprofit because you've never worked in the IRS. Fuck you, man. We're not doing it that way. Right?
That's their favorite thing. To Charles, you don't understand. Oh, wait a minute. We got the time here. So listen, let's do this. We have a lot of interesting nonprofit adventures to dive into right here. People can join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I know for some people, Charles, 990s seem boring. You and I always seem to have a rip roaring good time looking through these things. People are going to be shocked. I don't understand why the NFL hasn't filed anything since 2015. We have to look at that. But we'll be right back. We'll take a look at all of this stuff. Stay with us.